Good morning. So this is the second video of this series. In the previous video, we had discussed about some fundamentals of input and output devices, and in this video, we are going to discuss about the evolution of the computer. Okay, so let's start. From the simple calculator to the modern day powerful data processor, computing devices has evolved in a relatively short span of time. The evolution of computing devices is shown in the timeline. So just go through the timeline. Let's time start from here. And in the year of 500 BC, 500 BC means about 3000 years ago from today. The machine named as abacus was developed and used to perform some arithmetic operations, that is only arithmetic calculation, and it was purely a mechanical device. If you want to know more about this, just I have given a link in the description box about the this working of the abacus. So if you are more interested, so just go through it. So this abacus was a mechanical device. Mechanical device means there was no any automation system. You have to handle it manually. And there was some balls, and on the basis of that movement of the balls, you can calculate the addition and some number systems. And after that, in the 1642, just see here the gap in the development, 500 BC, and after that in the 1642. Name was the scientist was Blaise Pascal, invented again a mechanical device only, mechanical calculator known as the Pascal calculator or the Pascaline, to do addition and subtraction of the two numbers directly. Means this machine, that is Pascaline, was able to perform addition and subtraction directly, and the multiplication and the division through the repeated addition and subtractions, right? So this Pascaline can perform addition and subtraction directly, and the multiplication and division by use of the addition and subtraction repeatedly. Like if you have to perform like 3 multiplied by 2, so this can be performed like 3 plus 3, that is 6, and this is 6. Means addition, 2 times of the addition of the same number. This is performed like a multiplication. So after this 1642, in the year of 1834, name of the scientist Charles Babbage. Charles Babbage developed the analytical engine, that is analytic engine or analytical engine. Basically, it was a concept only, it was not implemented yet, but our basic structure of these nowadays digital computer is depends on this only. This is architecture only. That's why the Charles Babbage is known as the father of digital computer. Charles Babbage is named as the father of digital computer. Invented analytical engine, a mechanical computing device for input, processing, storing and displaying the output, which is considered to form the basis of the modern computers. So basically this was a concept only, but what the functions can be performed by nowadays devices was there. Means there was some input method and some processing methods, some storing methods and displaying the output method. And in 1890, a tabulating machine was developed by Herman Hollerith, designed a tabulating machine for summarizing the data stored on the punched card. Basically, this was the first storage device that is used. In Charles Babbage's machine, there was concept of the storage only, but it was not implemented. But in Herman Hollerith, there was a developed device named as punched card that was used to store the content. It is considered to be the first step towards the programming. This was the first storage device, and if we store something on the basis of some instructions, basically the works performed, and that instructions was named as the program. This was the very first step towards the programming concept. And in 1937, there was a named as a Turing machine. The Turing machine concept was a general purpose programmable machine that was capable of solving any problem by executing the program stored on the punched card. Basically, this was a machine, or we can say a device in which some stored instructions are there. Stored instructions, stored instructions. On the basis of these instructions, and these instructions were stored on the punched card, and on the basis of these instructions, some operations takes place for the purpose of addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. So this Turing machine basically a device where the some stored instructions are there. And then in 1945, the machine named as EDVOC and ENIAC was developed by John von Neumann, introduced the concept of stored programs computer which was capable of storing data as well as programs in the memory. The EDVOC and then the ENIAC computers were developed based on this concept. Basically, here the EDVOC and then ENIAC computers were developed. Initially, the EDVOC was developed. EDVOC, and basically this was uh, an ENIAC. This was basically the digital, and this was basically the analog. And after that, basically, first analog developed, then the development of digital computer, that was the ENIAC, takes place in the 1945. Then in year 1947, the development of transistors makes the computers very reliable and small in size, have large capacity, and smart as also. Initially, the vacuum tubes were used, and after invention of this transistors, the vacuum tubes were replaced by these transistors, and these transistors were developed at Bell, ATN Bell Library, and with the use of semiconductor materials. And then after 1917, the evolvement of in integrated circuit, that is also named as ICs, with the help of silicon and germanium, the chip were developed which contains entire electronic circuit on a very small area. The size of computers drastically reduced because of the ICs, because the space taken by 100 or 1000 transistors was replaced by a single IC, that is basically 10 to 20 times smaller than this fabrication of 100 transistors or 1000 transistors. So this was the general timelines where the addition and subtraction was there, and then addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division was there. Then the concept of the input output systems. Then here the very first storage device named as punched card, and here the concept of the programming or stored programs, and then here the analog to digital concept evolved, Then the involvement of the transistors that reduce the size and improve the performance of the systems, and then integrated circuits. The use of integrated circuits dramatically reduce the size and improve the performance and the quality of the computer system. Then the von Neumann architecture is shown in this. What was the von Neumann? Basically some input, then processing and memory and output. Shown in the figure, it consists of the central processing unit. Basically, this is the uh, on the which the digital computer is based on. This von Neumann architecture is central processing unit CPU for processing arithmetic and logic instructions, a memory to store the data and programs, a input and output devices, and communication channels to send or receive the output data. The electronic numerical integrator and computer, that is the ENIAC, is the first binary programmable computer. Binary programmable computer based on the von Neumann architecture. So remember it. This ENIAC, that is electronic numerical integrator and computer, is the first binary programmable computer based on the von Neumann architecture. During the 1970s, large scale integration, that is the LSI, of the electronic circuit allowed integration of the complete CPU on a single chip. Basically, the CPU is what? CPU, then in the CPU, there was a control unit, there was arithmetic and logic unit, there was a primary memory, all the were in CPU. But in 1970, after the development of the ICs and the large scale integration, electronic circuit allowed integration of the complete CPU on a single chip called the microprocessor. And one name, that is the Moore law, predicted exponential growth in the number of transistors that could be assembled in a single microchip. There was a Moore law on the basis of which we can fabricate the transistors on a circuit. In 1980s, the processing power of the computers increased exponentially by integrating around 3 million components. 3 million components on a small sized chip, termed as the very large scale integration. Basically, there is types of ICs. That's basically a small scale integration, SSI, large scale integration, then very large scale integration, then ultra large scale integration. These are the types of basically ICs, and how they are categorized. This was explained here. The further, the advancement in the technology has made it feasible to fabricate high density of the transistors and other components, approx 106 components on a single IC, called the super large scale integration. They are ultra large or super large as shown in the figure. Basically, on the basis of number of transistors fabricated in this ICs are categorized as small scale integration, large scale integration, very large scale, and ultra large scale integrations. So, in very ultra large scale are the super large scale integrations. 106 components of this transistors ICs can be fabricated on a single ICs. Now we can see here in the 1940 and the 1950, 1960, you can see in the 1940 the development started, and in the 1950 you can reach here, and the 1960 like this, like this. Yeah. So this is the timeline, and these are the number of transistors fabricated in a single IC. If we read it as the Indian standard, then it is 1, 10, 100, 1000, 10,000, 1 lakh, 10 lakh, it is 1,000, 10,000, then 1 lakh, 10 lakh, 1 crore, 10 crore, 1 Arab, and 10 Arab. 10 Arab. And if we read it as the international standard, then it becomes 1, 10, 100, 1000, 10,000, 100,000, then 1 million, 1 million, 10 million, 100 million, 1 billion, and here 10 billion, 10 billion. So this much transistor were fabricated in a single, basically single device or the single IC that was named as the microprocessors. So we can here see in the 90s and the 90s about 2000 the involvement development of the Pentium by the Intel takes place, and the Pentium 1, 2, 3, 4, then Core 2 Duo like, and nowadays it is a time of Titanium processor, so Core i3, i5 and i7. In these processors, about 10 billion of the transistors are there in a single processor. Okay, so IBM introduced is the first personal computer, that is PC, for the home users in the 1981, and the Apple introduced Macintosh machines in 1984, and the popularity of the PC surged by the introduction of the graphical user interface, and the previous one was the command user interface. Means everything that we have to perform by the computer, we have to give a suitable command to the computer, and the computer will perform accordingly. And nowadays we have number of options on the desktop by the using keyboard and the mouse by simply clicking 1, 2, 3 clicks, and or the combination of keys, we can perform number of tasks without giving any commands by using the keyboard. Okay, so this one where some graphical icons are there, and the use of mouse, that is copy paste, all these functionalities are there. This type of the interface is called the graphical user interface, and the interface in which only command can be given to the computer, that was named as the command user interface or command based user interface. You can say it command based user interface. So the Microsoft, this initially we refer the Microsoft developed this graphical user interface, and this was the most basically the base reason behind the popularity of this Microsoft. With command line interfaces like Linux or Unix and the DOS. These are basically the command based user interface, and this Microsoft, this was the graphical user interface. This provides the graphical user interface. Around 1990, the growth of the World Wide Web further accelerated the mass usage of the computers, and therefore computers have become an indispensable part of the everyday life. Basically, you can imagine your computer without the use of internet. It may be used for some local purpose like some programming and some printing material, printing works, some typing works. Okay, but there was a very limitations of the works. But if it is connected with the internet, then anything you can perform on the computers. Then the further with the introduction of the laptops, personal computers was made portable to a great extent. This was followed by the smartphones, tablets, and other personal digital assistants, and like your mobile, your tablet, smartphones. These devices basically are so smart, are so useful, that is everything can be performed. These can devices can be used for the banking purpose, for the study purpose, for the medical purpose, for research purpose, all fields. These devices have leveraged the technological advancement in the processor miniaturization. This is basically the prototype. Basically the prototype. Prototype. Okay. Faster memory, high speed data, and the connectivity mechanisms. The next wave of the computing devices includes the wearable gadgets such as the smartwatch, lenses, headbands, headphones, etc. Further, the smart appliances are becoming a part of the Internet of Things. Internet of Things, very important terms. What it means? Basically, nowadays the devices are controlled by the internet. Means even we can on off certain devices like ACs, computers, or the doors of offices from our home, or even we can switch on off refrigerator or the ACs off at home from my office, which is a far kilometer away, by the use of the internet only. So all these devices that can be controlled and operated by use of the internet, collectively called the Internet of Things, by leverage of power of the artificial intelligence. This Internet of Things use basically the artificial intelligence. The next thing is the computer memory. There are two types of the memories. So let's understand. A computer system needs memory to store the data and the instructions for the processing. Whenever we talk about the memory of the computer system, we usually talk about the main or primary memory. If you only talk about the memory of the computer, it means we are talking about the primary or the main memory of the computer system. The secondary memory, also called the storage device, is used to store the data, instructions, and the results permanently. If we write like the memory of memory, it means it is main memory, and if we write like storage, it means it is secondary memory. Okay. Some units of the memory. A computer system uses binary numbers to store and process data. A computer system uses binary numbers to store and process the data. The binary digits, that is the 0 and 1. Basically, one thing is the bit. Bit is nothing but binary plus digit. It is called bit. So 0 and 1, which are the basic units of the computer, are called the bit. Further, these bits are grouped together to form the words. A 4-bit word is called a nibble. Example of the nibble are this. Here is a 4 digits. It may be 0 or 1, like this. A 2 nibble word, that is the 8-bit word, is called the byte. For example, this combination of 8-bit or the 2 nibble is called 1 byte. Like any other standard unit, bytes are grouped together to make bigger chunks or the units of the memory. And this here is a table like kilobyte, that is a 1024 byte, then megabyte, that is a 1024 kilobyte, gigabyte, then terabyte, then petabyte, exabyte, zettabyte, and iota, and some are the called the Bronto byte, and there is a called Geop. These two memory units are also. So till now, Geop is the largest unit of the memory, computer memory. That is called Geop. So now the types of the memory. The human beings memorize many things over a long lifetime, and recall from memory to make a decision or some actions. However, we do not rely on our memory completely, and we make notes and store important data and information using other media such as the notebook, manual, journals, documents, etc. Similarly, computers have two types of the memory. One is called the primary and another one is called secondary memory. So let's understand what is the primary memory. The primary memory is an essential component of a computer system. Programs and data are loaded into the primary memory before processing. Anything that we want to execute on the system or to uh, perform on the system by your pen drive, by your CD, by your hard disk, anything, any storage device, initially it has to be loaded into the primary memory. The CPU interacts directly with the primary memory only. CPU cannot take the data from your secondary memory like from your pen drive, from your CD, hard disk, DVD. The content from these devices first loaded into the RAM, that is the primary memory. Then the CPU takes data from this memory for the execution purpose to perform read or write operations. It is of two types, that is the random access memory RAM and the read only memory, that is the ROM. These two memories are called the primary memory. Which one is? First one is the RAM and then ROM. These two memory are the primary memories. Okay. So very first the RAM. RAM is volatile. What means volatile? Volatile means this is the nature of the memory or the primary memory by which it retains the data in the memory only when power supply is there. Means when your computer is on, there is power supply. If your computer is switched off or no power supply, then the content from this memory is automatically erased. This nature is called the volatile. So you can say the RAM is volatile means the content resides in the RAM till your system is on only. If your system is shut down or not working, RAM is clearly blank. There is no any storage, no any content resides inside the RAM when your system is not working. That is, as long as the power is supplied to the computer. Yes, the RAM is volatile. That is, as long as power is supplied to the computer, it retains the data in it. But as soon as the power supply is turned off, all the content of the RAMs are wiped out. It is used to store the data temporarily while the computer is working. Whenever the computer is started or the software application is launched, the required program and the data are loaded into the RAM for processing. This process, which one? The loading of required program and data. Loading of required program and data into the RAM is called booting. What is booting? Loading of required program and data from any secondary storage to the RAM is called the booting. RAM is usually referred to as the main memory and is faster than the secondary memory or the storage devices. On the other hand, ROM is non-volatile, which means its contents are not lost even when the power is turned off. It is used as a small but faster permanent storage for the content which are rarely changed. It is used as a small but faster permanent storage for the content which are rarely changed. For example, the startup programs that is called bootloader that loads the operating system into the primary memory is stored in the ROM, and this software is also called firmware. Firmware. One is called hardware and software, and one is called firmware. Okay. Next one is the cache memory. The RAM is faster than secondary storage, but not as fast as a computer processor. So, because of the RAM, a CPU may have to slow down because comparatively processor is faster than the RAM. Means RAM is unable to feed the input to the processor timely. So to speed up this operation, to speed up the operation of the CPU, a very high speed memory is placed between the CPU and the primary memory known as the cache memory. It stores the copies of the data from frequently accessed primary memory locations, thus reducing the average time required to access the data from the primary memory. So, what it means? Try to understand. Here is a RAM and here is a CPU. Let very first when CPU requires any data, the RAM provides it. But at the same time, the data is also transferred to cache, and the CPU can take data from cache memory also. When the same data is required the next time, or the any data is required by the CPU, very first some mechanism is there by which the data is searched into the cache memory, whether the data present in the cache memory or not, because accessing the data from the RAM and the is slower than the accessing data from the cache. If it is available inside the cache, then it is easier to access. If it is found inside the cache, it's okay. If it is not found in the cache, then the search in the RAM will take place. When the data is again transferred from the RAM to CPU, at the same time data is transferred to the cache memory. So, if the same data is required next time, the data will be available into the cache, and it speed up the utilization of the CPU in this way. So, this is the primary memory, and okay, how it works. When the CPU needs some data, it first examines the cache memory. In case the requirement is met, it is read from the cache, otherwise the primary storage is accessed. The secondary memory. Primary memory has a limited storage capacity and is either volatile RAM or read-only memory. Thus, a computer system needs auxiliary or the secondary memory to permanently store the data or the instructions for the further use. The secondary memory is non-volatile. The secondary memory is non-volatile and has larger storage capacity than the primary memory. It is slower and cheaper than the main memory, but it cannot be accessed directly by the CPU. Contents of the secondary storage need to be first brought into the main memory for the CPU to access. Example of the secondary memory devices are hard disk, drive, CD, compact disk, DVD, memory card, etc. These are the secondary devices. Means except the RAM, cache and the ROM, all other storage devices are secondary one. However, these days there are the secondary storage like SSD which supports very fast data transfer speeds as compared to the earlier hard disk. Also, data transfer between computers have become easier than the simple due to the availability of the small size and portable flash or the pen drives. Okay, so we discussed today the secondary storage devices. These are the secondary storage device: hard disk, pen drive, DVD, memory disk, and the tape and solid state devices. And primary devices can cache memory and the evolution units and the computer memory. Then basically this evolution, evolution the computer memory. In computer memory, we discuss the units, then primary memory, cache memory, and the secondary memory. So, this is all. We'll meet in the next class. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.